Hey everybody, I'm Will Garcia.
And I'm Josh Earl.
And we're the Hoops Guys. And we're continuing our 2014-15 previews by We're Going to Miami. That song's very copyrighted. Anyway, it's the Miami Heat. Miami.
Yeah.
How'd they do last year, Josh?
Very well. Despite a dip in their regular season record from 66-16 in 2012-13 season to just 54-28 last year, they did become only the third franchise in NBA history to make 4 straight finals appearances in a row. Mm-hmm. And we're talking legendary company here. Mm-hmm. The Bill Russell-led Celtics went to 10 straight finals from 56-57 season through the 68-69 season. The Larry Bird era Celtics from 83-84 season through 86-87 season, and the Magic Johnson Showtime Lakers from 81-82 season through the 84-85 season. So high praise to be able to do that. And they may have only been 500 in their 4 finals appearances, but the fact that they got there and they won 2 Larry O'Brien championship trophies is a huge accomplishment and should be very respected and revered.
Absolutely. Another huge accomplishment is being arguably the best offense in all of basketball, which the Miami Heat were last year. They finished 5th in offensive rating, 1st in effective field goal percentage, and 1st in actual points per shot. There's a big reason. In fact, there are 3 big reasons for why that was the case, because Wade, Bosh, and LeBron all had their highest career true shooting percentages. Bosh at 60, Wade at 59, LeBron at 65% true shooting. Oh my God, that's crazy.
Yes, and one of the reasons for this is they got really highly valuable shots and they converted them. They finished 2nd in expected points per shot, which is a shot selection measurement produced by Ian Levy over at Nylon Calculus. Check it out. They were 6th in restricted area true shot attempts and 1st in field goal percentage from the restricted area. They shot the 6th fewest mid-range shots, and the ones they did shoot, they hit pretty well, finishing 4th in field goal percentage from mid-range. They were 1st in corner 3 shot attempts and 1st in hitting those. And they were also 1st at in the paint field goal percentage. And on top of all of that, they also got to the line very often, finishing 8th in free throw per field goal attempt.
Yeah, and then on defense, that trapping system, it really worked well. This team finished 1st in turnovers percentage on defense, forcing almost 17 turnovers per game. Let that sink in. 17 turnovers per game. That's crazy. And of course it worked out well because this team finished 11th in defensive rating and held opposing teams to 97.5 points per game.
Yeah, not everything went well for the Heat over this past year, though.
Yeah.
This offseason, LeBron James took his talents back to the Cleve. Anytime the best player in the world leaves your team, it's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
Eric Spoelstra, Dwyane Wade, Chris Bosh, and the rest of the Heatles will definitely have to make some adjustments. Mm-hmm. This team's definitely going to miss the very crazy broad array of skills that LeBron brings to the table. And while he wasn't able to bring the 8 championships that was touted in the Big Three's introduction to Heat fans, you gotta give credit to LeBron and the Heat over the past several years because he leaves with the Heat having gone to 4 straight finals and having 2 more championships to show for it. But it's still a massive loss.
Yeah. One thing that is also a massive loss is when you lose the ball on offense, which the Heat didn't do very well. They didn't take very good care of the ball, finishing 2nd to last in turnover percentage. LeBron, Wade, Chalmers, Bosh, and Norris Cole averaged only 2 fewer turnovers per game than the entire Dallas Mavericks team last year. And Dallas wasn't even the best at taking care of the ball last year.
Yeah.
They 11.5 per game from those guys. That's nuts.
Yeah. They also struggled to get shots in the paint, where they finished 29th at in-the-paint true shot attempts. And they didn't really make above-the-break threes that well, finishing 26th in above-the-break three-point percentage. They didn't really crash the boards well, finishing 29th in offensive rebound rate and 24th in defensive rebound rate. In fact, this team had nobody in the top 45 in rebounds per game. And the one person they did have that was top 40 in rebound rate was DeAndre Liggins, who only played 1 minute.
Yeah, that's not awesome. The aggressive defense forced turnovers, but one thing that wasn't awesome for it was that it did force some really good looks for opponents that opponents converted well. Mind you, this is part of that trapping system. Yes. That's just kind of the side effect of it. But this team did finish 24th in defensive XPPS and 20th in actual defensive points per shot, because a lot of those shots, they were wide open. And then a lot of those shots were also perimeter jumpers, which are highly valuable shots. This team finished dead last at minimizing corner threes, which are one of the most efficient shots in basketball, and then 22nd in field goal percentage thereof. And then also finished 27th at minimizing above the break three-point shots.
Yeah, and they also struggled at contesting shots in the paint, where they were 29th at in the paint defensive field goal percentage. And they didn't really force opponents into many of the analytically least valuable shots, aka mid-range. They were 28th in mid-range true shot attempts defensively. Yeah,
having said that, that sounds like it's a lot of bad stuff, but this team still has a pretty damn good core. Headlined, arguably, he's either 1A or 1B, depending on how you look at things, by a guy nicknamed Flash or Wow or even Pookie. Yeah, Chuck did it. Dwyane Wade. So Wade has gotten a lot of crap for a guy who put up 19, 5, and 5 last year. Even if he isn't quite as explosive as he used to be and can't quite get by his athleticism as much as he used to, he's still a great scorer and an exceptional facilitator for that two-guard position. He started his career up as a point guard. You can kind of tell by that. Really good for a guard rebounder, great at generating turnovers, a really rock-solid finisher who's excellent at getting to the line. Dwyane Wade is still one of the best shooting guards in basketball, and for a guy who's as talented as he is, he's gotten a lot of crap recently. To be fair, he has gotten injured quite a bit. He only was able to play in 54 games last year. But hopefully things turn up for Wade a lot better in 2014-15, and he's able to ball the way we are kind of grown accustomed to him seeing from him.
Yeah. Another Heat player that kind of has had his fair share of shit thrown at him is Chris Bosh. Mm-hmm. Almost since the moment he signed, he was denigrated as the third wheel. The guy that it's Wade and LeBron that are really doing everything that's important. But if you really paid attention and you listened to head coach Eric Spoelstra, who espoused this so often, he was their most important player. Yes, LeBron James, the MVP, was on the roster, but it was Bosh who let them play the way that they played. It was his ability to stretch the floor as a big man, play killer defense, not only being able to blitz the pick and roll coverages like they had him doing and be able to get back to his guys, but he was almost always playing against guys who were much bigger, both height and weight-wise, than him as the nominal center in those lineups and holding his own defensively. A lot of the criticism comes from the fact that his numbers, both in rebounding and points per game, dropped precipitously when he moved to Miami. But what's one thing we talk about here a lot? Context. Let's think about this for a second. In Toronto, outside of his first 2 years in Toronto, he averaged over 15 field goal attempts per game. Mm-hmm. In Miami, outside of this current season, he's never averaged over 14.2 field goal attempts per game. So his shot attempts decreased a fair amount, which is naturally going to impact his opportunity to score points, isn't it? And
Yeah.
when you factor in the shift in his kind of role offensively away from more of a post-up and face-up scoring threat to a floor spacing, pick-and-pop type guy, it makes sense that his rebounding numbers went down too, because he's further away from the basket, and he's playing with great wing rebounders in Dwyane Wade and LeBron James.
Plus, there are fewer missed shots because this team is so efficient.
Exactly. So, all the people that thought Bosh fell off, they're about to be eating a lot of crow because he's going to put up very good numbers this year, and you're going to see so many stupid stories about, oh, the Raptors' Bosh is back. He's back. He never went anywhere. In fact, over the past 4 years, he's only gotten better since he was in Toronto, and he's about to show it.
Exactly. One guy who the Heat hope do better than he did last year is Luol Deng, who had a bit of a down year, especially in Cleveland, but Cleveland was kind of a mess last year, so I understand it. So here's the thing with Luol Deng. He's not anything close to even being close to being close to LeBron James. He's not that kind of a guy. He isn't your go-to guy. He isn't quite nearly, no. You're not going to be able to plug and play and have everything work the same. Having said that, that's the same thing about literally everybody else in basketball. So not really much news, is it? Luol Deng is still a skilled man and team defender who can create a little bit off the bounce and make solid plays. He did have that bad run in Cleveland, though. 50% true shooting, not very good. And then a few down years towards the end of his run in Chicago. But chemistry issues in Cleveland and a not awesome offensive system on either team is probably a likely culprit for that. I think that as long as Deng isn't too ball dominant, he's going to be a really useful and beneficial player for this Heat team. Kind of like Josh McRoberts, who I kind of have a sneaky basketball crush on.
It's true.
It is. He had a bit of a renaissance in Charlotte. I say that a lot about this guy, but it's the truth. He proved himself to be one of the best big man facilitators in all of basketball, and he was vital to Charlotte's moderate success last year as a killer spacing option who can move that ball and do things that dudes who are almost 7 feet tall are not supposed to be able to do. His rebounding went down, but you have to look at the context of it. MKG, Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, is kind of the guy who's responsible for generating offensive rebounds on that team. Everyone else kind of gets back. Plus, like we mentioned with Bosh, he plays further away from the basket, so it does limit his rebounding opportunities. Before last year, though, McRoberts' lowest rebounding season per 36 was 7.9, which isn't great, but is highly respectable. It's not atrocious. It's not like late 2000s Bargnani out there. So I think he's one of the best big man space threats in the game. And if you can move the ball and not be a total sieve on the glass and on the defense, then I think he's a great piece for this team who can really benefit the other players around him.
Yeah. Another player that the Heat are hoping will have that same type of impact, especially long-term, was their first-round pick, Shabazz Napier. He's the reigning NCAA tournament most outstanding player, and he rightfully earned that award with his perimeter scoring, his facilitation, his shooting, his rebounding, and his leadership. I don't know if he'll play a lot this year, given the presence of Wade, Cole, Chalmers, etc., but long-term, Shabazz should be a key piece of the Heat going forward.
Yep.
A guy who's probably not a key piece for the Heat going forward just because of age and injury concerns is Danny Granger. Patellar tendinosis kind of turned him from the Pacers' star player to just a rotation wing who may or may not contribute much this year. Mm-hmm. Heat are hoping it's more may than may not, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, James Ennis is a guy who hopefully can contribute a bit for the Heat. He did play very well in preseason, going 11 points per game on 53, 42, 89 shooting splits. And he seems to be continuing that, going 46, 44.4, and 80 in the first 10 games this season. And anytime you can get a big, or not a big dude, but a big wing, he's pretty big for a wing, who can space the floor, that is highly valuable. And if James Ennis can provide that, and that alone, that is a killer pickup.
Yeah, another guy that was a pickup that maybe most people didn't think too much of, but has kind of worked out, myself included, didn't think it would work out, Sean Williams. Yeah. Prior to this season, if you had told me that Sean Williams would get a key spot in the Heat rotation, I would be inclined to think that the Heat would not be that good. But so far this season, he started for the Heat every game at power forward, and he's done well. It's only 10 games, but he's been shooting 53, 52, 71 splits, resulting in a crazy true shooting percentage of 70.5.
Holy cow.
There's no way that's going to stay that way.
Absolutely
there
not.
will definitely be regression to the mean, but if Williams can continue to be at least a consistent floor spacing threat from that power forward position and play solid D over the rest of the season, he will have really made me look like a fool.
Yeah. One thing that didn't really make anybody look like a fool, but definitely made a lot of people in Miami pretty sad, is that LeBron James is gone now. We already kind of touched base on the gist of it, but let's just put it this way. The Heat did lose the best player in all of basketball and someone who is going to arguably end his career as the greatest of all time. It's going to hurt. And a lot of people are going to have to step it up and do things that they weren't doing over the past couple of years in order to sort of fill in some of that big, huge just hole that's gone when you lose a guy like LeBron.
Mm-hmm.
Another guy this team lost is Shane Battier, one of Josh's favorite players, one of my favorite players too. Great man, great team defender, a really solid glue guy on offense. Sort of ended his career as a tweener forward who could play some three, play some four, and really one of the best guys in an entire locker room, you know, you could ever really hope for. The best sort of veteran presence you could ever want for your team. Josh says a thing, and I like this term. He calls it process defense, and it's, you know, getting the hand up, fighting through screens, doing all the little things that all the coaches go nuts for, and most of the fans don't really notice. Basically, all the defense that doesn't end up on Sports Center.
Yeah.
And all of that, Shane Battier is really good at. So, the biggest thing that the Heat are going to lose, though, Battioki.
Yeah. It's a shame. Another, like, historically great player in his area of expertise that the Heat lost this offseason is Ray Allen, a.k.a. Jesus Shuttlesworth. Mm-hmm. Another one of my all-time favorite players. He's simply one of the best shooters of all time and a player the defense always had to keep track of, because if he got just the tiniest glimmer of daylight, that net was going to look like the Miami Heat logo. Yeah.
Yeah.
The loss of his shooting and the magnetic effects it had on the defense is going to be really tough to replace.
Yeah, speaking of replace, the Heat replaced 53.4% of their player minutes this year, according to John Schumann on the Twitter thing. That said, major players Wade, Bosh, Super Mario, and Norris Cole all returned, so continuity shouldn't be a major problem, but anytime you have to adjust to losing a guy like LeBron, there is going to be a little bit of change going on. It's going to take a little time.
Yeah. Luckily, they have a positive rest differential on their side.
Yes.
And rest differential is just looking at a team over the course of the season compared to their opponents over the course of the season in regards to how many road back-to-backs, 3 games in 4 nights, and 4 games in 5 nights they play. So the Heat have a positive rest differential of 26, which means they should be more well-rested over the course of the season than their opponents. When you factor in Wade's health issues of late and the fact they've got some other guys who've had some health injuries, Danny Granger, for instance, McRoberts has been kind of out for the moment, that rest is really going to help them.
Yeah. Speaking of something that helps us, it's a segment we do where we ask not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 questions in our segment called 5 Questions. And that just lets us talk about some stuff that we otherwise maybe wouldn't have been able to get to. So Josh has the first one. Take it away, buddy.
Can Dwyane Wade stay healthy?
Do I look like a doctor? Well,
I don't know.
I'm not going to go around predicting people's health, but based on Wade's past injury problems, I wouldn't be surprised if the Heat maybe had to sit him out for a couple of games just for rest with that knee stuff going on. It's not very good. But I don't know. I mean, maybe get a magic 8-ball. I'm hoping he can stay healthy, but history doesn't look very good. So one thing that is looking good is Chris Bosh right now. Do you think he can stay playing like a number one option? Of course you can, but maybe just go and rant about Bosh some more about how awesome he is. Do you think he can stay as a number one option after spending the past couple years as a third guy?
Definitely. I actually, it's funny because everyone usually kind of says some iteration of LaMarcus Aldridge, Kevin Love, Blake Griffin, Anthony Davis as best power forward in the league right now. I think Bosh should be in that discussion and probably should be near the top of that discussion because when you think about overall impact on the game, there's very few players that have his skill sets. As we mentioned, he's a capable post scorer. He showed that in Toronto, and he still can do it in Miami. When he has been in the post, he's done well. He can space. He's deadly from mid-range, and he's one of the few bigs who's like a legit three-point floor spacer now. On top of it, super great defensive linchpin type defender as a big. He's not the prototypical rim protector that you think of when you think of that, but in terms of his defensive coverage of pick and rolls and in making sure that the passing lanes are closed right when they're going to open and that, the ball handler is being kind of shifted towards where the coach wants him to go. He's just stellar in that regard. And it's only been a couple of games so far this year, but he's putting up, once again, kind of Toronto-era numbers, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if that continues because Chris Bosh has only gotten better since Toronto, and now he's going to be the primary shot guy again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we've talked about Wade, we talked about Bosh, but what about some of the younger guys that they have?
Yeah.
Will any of these younger players actually prove that they should be part of this Heat team beyond the next few years?
Well, I know there are a couple guys who I personally think should be on this team for a while, and I'm going to give a little bit of love to a guy no one's really talking about. His name is Andre Dawkins. Everyone's like, huh? Andre Dawkins was one of the best shooters in all of college last year. And I think that he could really flourish in that sort of Novak role where we just want you shooting that damn ball. Coming in as a guy who can just space it like crazy. And anytime you have a guy who can do that, it's always a plus. Another young guy who a couple more people are talking about is Shabazz Napier. I think that let me put it this way. I'd put a quarter or so on him being a future starting point guard for this team. He has a really diverse offensive skill set, good shooter, good penetrator, decent facilitator, not the best finisher because he weighs like $120, but he's still really useful offensive player and really also was a solid shot creator in college. I wouldn't be surprised if he winds up being a decent NBA point guard. So those are the two big ones. And then, as mentioned, James Ennis is pretty young too, and that's another floor spacing guy. They have a lot of guys who can shoot the snot out of it. And I think that those young guys could all be a significant part of this team or another team going forward.
Fair enough.
So who do we think winds up filling the deficit as a sort of role point guard in LeBron's absence?
Dwyane Wade.
Yeah.
The ball is going to be in Dwyane Wade's hands. That said, you'll also still see Norris Cole, Mario Chalmers, and even some Shabazz Napier in that kind of run the offense, initiate the actions type role. But primarily it's going to be Wade's.
I agree with that. To be fair, Wade is averaging the most assists he has since the 2010 or since the 2009-2010 season. We know what happened in 2010-2011.
Yes.
So I think you're right on the money with that.
Yeah. We touched on it a little bit in asking about the younger players, but what is this team's long-term plan? I mean, Bosh isn't overly old. He's only 30, but Dwyane Wade's a little bit older and has injury issues. And both Dang and McRoberts are kind of middle age in terms of NBA age,
yeah.
In the late 20s. And they don't really have a lot of young guys on the roster. So what's the plan long term for the Heat?
To be totally honest, I'm not quite sure what they're going to do. The free agent market, Miami is an attractive place. It's Miami. I want to go there. I'm in Michigan right now. I wish I was in Miami. So because of that makes it pretty attractive. Then this team also not bad at drafting. I wouldn't exactly call them Spurs level in terms of drafting or like an elite team at it, but they showed this year that they can, in the past couple of years as well, they can find good guys who fit into their system. And then they have one of the best coaches in basketball in Eric Spoelstra. So whatever they're doing, I'm not entirely sure what it's going to look like after Bosh and Wade leave or retire or become significantly diminished. But I'm not scared about it because these guys know what the hell they're doing, and they have multiple ways they could go, and I think it's just going to be kind of situational and probably a hybrid of building through the draft and building through free agency.
Yeah, speaking of not being scared because these guys should know what they're doing, hopefully you're not scared about our next segment because hopefully you think we know what we're doing. And the next segment is something we call 20-50-80, which is basically just our predictions for the season. Mm-hmm. What's 20% likely, 50% likely, and 80% likely. It allows us to kind of predict a variety of things where we can predict something that's a little more unlikely, something that's probably, could not happen, and something that we think is definitely most likely going to happen without being too locked in for us getting in trouble for it later.
It lets us be wrong without any guilt. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's glorious.
So I'm changing my 20% prediction a little bit on the fly. I think there's a 20% chance this team wins the Southeast.
Fair enough.
This isn't... The Wizards are infallible. The Hornets are not infallible. And I think this team is right in the mix with there. I'd personally put it closer to like 30, but it's called 20-50-80, so yeah.
Fair enough.
I think there's a 50% chance that Dwyane Wade misses at least 20 games. 62 is his average over the past 4 years. He has those flare-ups. He's going to be asked to do a little bit more, which means he'll probably be driving more. And anytime you have more plays, the chance of an injury happening is a little bit higher. So I hope I'm wrong, but I'm 50-50 on it. It's a coin flip. Then I'm going a little bold here, but I think there's an 80% chance that Chris Bosh makes an All-NBA team.
Oh, yeah.
And... there are a lot of really good... Is Bosh a power forward or a center?
It depends on how you want to put it, I guess.
Exactly. Maybe it means he's eligible for both, which increases his chances. I don't know. Yeah. But out of the big dudes, there is LaMarcus Aldridge, Blake Griffin. You do have
Anthony
Davis. Yeah. There are Kevin Love. There are a lot of great bigs, but Chris Bosh is also a great big, and he's also going to be a number one or at least 1A option on this Heat team as we've seen so far. What we've seen through these first 10 games is totally sustainable and isn't shocking me in the slightest. And if he can put up 24, 9 or 10 in like a block and a half, you're getting into an All-NBA team.
Yeah. Speaking of Bosh being either 1 or 1A or B, the other 1A or B is going to be Dwyane Wade, and I think it's 20% likely that Wade has a pre-LeBron type season. Will already mentioned that his assists are the highest they've been so far since the year before LeBron's arrival. In his first 7 seasons, Wade averaged over 25 points a game, 6 assists a game, and 4.5 rebounds per game in 4 different seasons. In his 4 seasons with LeBron, only one of those seasons came anywhere close. So I think without LeBron there, as we mentioned, Wade's going to get that primary shot creation, ball handler role back. Mm-hmm. And if he can stay healthy, I think he's going to put up kind of the Wade numbers that we remember before the Big Three era.
Yep.
I think it's 50% likely that they get to the second round this year.
Yeah.
People act like this team's going to be really bad. They're not going to be nearly as bad as the Cavs were when LeBron left that first time. So,
yeah,
they still have a lot of really good talent. They have an amazing coach. They're going to be fine. And in the East, there aren't that many teams that I think are going to be clearly better than them. So I would not be surprised to see them get past that first round.
Yep.
I think it's 80% likely, and this one kind of makes me sad, but we mentioned previously that they're just the 3rd franchise in NBA history to go to 4 straight finals. Mm-hmm. But I think it's 80% likely that 4-year stretch is not going to be viewed as a dynasty. Even though they are a dynasty. Anytime you go to the finals 4 straight times, let's review the teams that did it beforehand. The Russell era Celtics, that's a dynasty. The Bird era Celtics, dynasty. And the Showtime Lakers, dynasty. So the Heat really should get their due as a dynasty as well, but I have the feeling that because they only won 2 out of those 4, they're going to be kind of just lumped in with really good championship teams, but not a dynasty, at least historically speaking.
The thing that's crazy is that I think they'd almost be seen as better if they only made those 2 that they won.
Yeah, they probably would.
And that's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully, this team isn't going to be ridiculous, though. And in fact, I think they're going to be quite good. I think that their ceiling is that 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference, where they're going to be neck and neck with teams like Toronto and Toronto.
Maybe Atlanta.
Atlanta. Yeah, Atlanta. So I think that's their ceiling. And I think their floor is that sort of 6th seed, 7th seed sort of range, unless some freak injuries happen.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to be quite good and should be a very entertaining team. Very, very good by teams that just lost the best player on the planet standards.
Yeah, I was going to say they're not going to be nearly as good as they were before, but they're not going to be nearly as bad as the Cavs were when LeBron left. They'll be a definite playoff team in the East, and they're going to be a team that other teams probably shouldn't want to face in the playoffs either.
Absolutely. But if you think that this video was as bad as the Cavs when LeBron left, then you should probably leave it a thumbs down. But if you thought it was as good as LeBron was, maybe give it a big fat thumbs up. Anyway, like this video or dislike it depending on how you feel. Leave a comment saying why, or maybe how you feel about this Miami Heat team. And if you did like this video, consider sharing it on Facebook, Twitter, carrier pigeon, Morse code, email, whatever. Additionally, if you liked it, consider hitting that subscribe button to be notified of all our future videos. And thank you so much for watching.
Take care, everyone.